introduction, the Institutionalist school is from American contribution about the economic thought. It began around year 1900 until now. In year 1900, Thorstein Veblen published his first book consisting of many articles and book reviews. So, in this topic, we will discuss on the thought of traditional institutionalism, not the new institutionalism they discussed in past as prologue. We go into historical background. American capitalism achievement in the period between Civil War and World War I was impressive. The rapid growth of United States made them the most powerful industrial system in the world and living conditions of focus. However, everything fell well short of their expectations after the general rise in national income. The working hours became longer, housing was inadequate, unemployment, the elderly was negligible, higher education was inaccessible for workers' children, health and safety regulations were inadequate. Employers frequently established company towns and controlled the workforce, although their personal life messed with the massive immigration that tend to reduce pay rates. Regressive tax usually was widespread. Repeated recession were disastrous for those who lose their jobs. So next is Age of Monopoly, which began in 1870s and accelerated around turn of century. When it came to the workers' respect and workers' interests, the state and federal government who declared laissez-faire were quick to use the police and militia to against the labor in industrial dispute. They also established tariff protection for business and granted for large subsidies to railroads. In late 19th century, many economists questioned assumptions and conclusions of the new classical school. So the doctrine that minimal the government interference produced maximum social well-being. There was so much concern too about the monopoly, poverty, and depression. Institutional economics developed in this context as push for social control and change gained momentum.
Two methods of achieving social change. The first one is reorganize society along socialist line, ameliorate condition through government intervention in the economy. The second one is undertake social reform. The objective of the approach was to save capitalists by improving the condition of the masses. Institutional economists in general was critical of social movement and favoured a radical reconstruction of society. The influence of the German historical school on American institutionalists. Most of the leaders of American Economic Association were familiar and friendly toward the German movement and its methodology. Some of Veblen's teachers and colleagues had studied in German. For example, John Bates Clark formulated a creed of Christian reform that had much in common with German reformist thinking. George S. Morris, one of Hegelians trained in the German university. Richard T. Ely studied under some of the leading historical economists in Germany and became an ardent believer in the superiority of the inductive method over deductive method. However, despite certain similarity in methodology between the German historical school and American institutionalists, the latter was not nationalistic but more liberal and democratic in its outlook.
So, whom did institutionalism benefit or seek to benefit? The school represented the reform aspirations of middle class during a period of growing bank capitalism and huge bank expansion. It represented needs of agrarian, small business, and the labor groups. The institutionalist concept drew the attention of reformers, government employees, union members, leaders of consumer organizations, and humanitarians who aspired to change the direction of private corporate operation in favor of their own interests. The multidisciplinary approach and support for social change of institutionalists have been praised by many other academicians.
How was the institutionalist school valid, useful, or correct in its time? First, looking at the economy as a whole as part of an revolutionary process and in an institutional setting added element of realist to economic analysis. Second, concern over business circle and monopolies. promote a reform movement that effectively remove many of the rough edge of capitalists. And the last one is emphasize on inductive studies to reduce the gap between economic theory and practice. Which tenet of the institutionalist school become lasting contributions? First one is holistic broad perspective. Become a reality within the economic mainstream with the appearance and widespread acceptance of Keynesian macroeconomy. In fact, with their aggregate approach, prescriptions for stabilizing economy, and their attention to political liberal, Keynesian and post-Keynesian tend to co-opt and supersede institutionalists. The metaphor of six blind men and the elephants to reveal the weakness of microeconomy. Second one is the reform movement. Modest step toward national economic planning for limited objectives such as conservation and full employment are in line with institutionalist thought. Legal protection of unionist social insurance, minimum wages, and maximum hour legislation are all legacies of the institutionalist challenge to orthodox economic thinking. Lasting contribution of institutionalists that found in other fields, labor relation, law and economic, and industrial organization. The last one is traditional institutional economic still present within United States today. Member of the Association for Revolutionary Economic is largely composed of economists who are oriented toward institutionalists toward policy perspective or both. They had published the Journal of Economics issue. However, the overall penetration of institutionalists into the mainstream of economic remained modest.
Hi everyone, my name is Li Jiajing and my number matrix is 289423. I will continue to present one of the important economists of institutionalists, which is the Thorstein van Veblen. Thorstein van Veblen is the son of Norwegian immigrants. He completed his undergraduate college education at Cotton College. Then his graduate work was done at John Hopkins and received a doctorate in philosophy at Yale. Veblen couldn't secure a teaching position because he held agnostic view at that time, when a divinity degree was valued for philosophy teaching. However, Veblen received fellowship at Cornell and at the University of Chicago for postdoctoral work, and he became the editor of the Journal of Political Economy at Chicago. Due to personal issues, poor teaching methods, and involvement with women, Veblen moved between colleges, including Stanford, the University of Missouri, and the New School for Social Research. Veblen's first and most popular book was The Theory of the Leisure Class, published in 1899. The leisure class is characterized by conspicuous consumptions, a propensity to avoid useful work, and conservatism. The first characteristic is conspicuous consumptions. Conspicuous consumptions is the purchase of goods or service for the specific purpose of displaying one's wealth, which means leisure class purchase goods or service is not to take care of physical, spiritual, aesthetic, and intellectual one, but just to highlight their wealth. So the dominant leisure class have influenced poor people consumption behavior, which include features of showy consumptions. According to Veblen, women showcase men's wealth through impractical clothing, indicating dependence on wealthy men. Then, the example of modern conspicuous consumptions like expensive stand display, luxury cars, Rolls Royces, and so on, reflect the persistent desire for it in today's society. The second characteristic is propensity to avoid useful work. According to Veblen, members of leisure class, to maintain their reputations, should avoid useful and productive work, like government, war, sport, devout observances. Veblen argued that despite indirect productivity's claim, the leisure class men's motions isn't wealth increased through productivity's effort. Occupations like government and war often rely on sieges being more predatory than productive. Force and fire possess in modern times, evident in warfare, business, and sport. The third characteristic is conservatism. Evolution of social structures is a process of nature selections of institutions. This is influenced by Darwin. From evolutionary view, current institutions are wrong to some extent because of slow change and outdated. Therefore, culture select cause a conflict between current belief and requirements, resulting in slow adaptations by a portions of society to change. This conflict is expressed as whatever is right versus the idea that according to the law of nature selections in human institutions, whatever is wrong. So according to the Veblen, the characteristic of leisure class to be conservatism and resist social change. Veblen introduced the consumption of Veblen's goods. Having Veblen's themes state that the conspicuous consumption utilities for Veblen's goods directly related to price. When price increase, conspicuous consumption utility for Veblen's goods increase. For example, if the price of expensive automobile increase from P2 to P3, the conspicuous consumption utility of Veblen's goods will increase, then cause the demand curve shift to the right from D2 to D3. Conversely, a decrease in price of expensive automobile from P2 to P1, the conspicuous consumption utility of Veblen's goods decrease, then cause the demand curve shift to the left from D2 to D1. Veblen challenged the customers are sovereign with dollar vote in new classical economy, arguing that conspicuous consumptions for social status disrupt rational choices. If large portions of consumptions are driven by status concerns rather than genuine utility, there will be wasteful consumptions. So Veblen suggests government interventions to restrict wasteful consumptions for overall well-being. Besides that, Veblen critiques new classical thought by challenging John Clark's status system and the hedonistic view of individuals emphasizes complex interactions influenced by social factors. Veblen accused neoclassicists of endorsing the current wealth distribution scheme. He more focused on social economy over business economy of price, profit, and ownership. Lastly, Veblen challenged perfect competitions, recognizes businessmen monopolistic control over price, and foreseeing the theory of monopolistic competitions in 1933. Veblen argued that when not harassed by overwork, people have not an aversion to work, but instead a natural instinct for workmanship and achievements, aiming to improve life for future generations. However, in modern capitalism, the focus on maximizing profit often hampers the true productions of goods. Big business prioritize making money over serving society needs, leading to manipulative practices that hinders genuine progress. That's all for me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is NORZILAH with metric number 387547, and I am going to show you guys to the second institutionalist economics school, which is Mitchell. So Mitchell's full name is Wesley Clare Mitchell, and he was born on 5 August 1874 at Richville, Illinois, US, and he is an American. His education detail is he was a PhD holder at University of Chicago during 1899, and then he proceeded to teach economics subject at University of Chicago until 1903, and then he proceeded to become assistant professor until 1908, and then he became a professor in economics at University of California until 1912, and then he started to be a professor at Columbia University during 1914 to until 1944. So Mitchell's big contribution in this institutionalist school is empirical research on business cycle. So let's continue to the background of Mitchell in this institutionalist school. So Mitchell was Veblen's brilliant student, who is the first economist in institutionalist school. While Veblen gave institutionalism a theory and philosophy, his analysis on business fluctuation gave institutionalism its empirical bent. He focused more on empirical studies compared to Veblen, who is only focused on speculations. And Mitchell believed that his statistical study would provide firmer foundation for Veblen's pioneering work.
Alright, so these are the three approaches brought by Mitchell, which are empirical investigation, business cycles, and social planning. So basically, empirical investigation is that Mitchell stressed empirical study and data acquisition in economic analysis. He felt economic theories should be based on real-world evidence rather than abstract model. And number two is business cycle. Mitchell's business cycle research is notable. To understand economic cycles, he did considerable empirical study on economic variation and their causes. And the number three is social planning. Mitchell transformed social planning, particularly economic policy and institution development. Mitchell argued economic analysis should go beyond academic models. He believed it should consider real-world process and their effect on society. Okay, now so we move to the importance of empirical investigation. So Mitchell, number one, Mitchell said economy is a science of economic behavior. So Mitchell emphasized that economics should be seen as a science studying of humans behave in economic context. This means focusing on real-world observation and data rather than relying solely on abstract theories. For example, instead of just theorizing about how people respond to changes in price, Mitchell would advocate for empirical studies analyzing actual consumer behavior in response to price changes. Okay, so number two is Mitchell said the future of economics is moving towards more research and less theorizing. So Mitchell foresaw the future of economics leaning more towards empirical research than abstract theorizing. He believed that understanding economic phenomena requires studying real-world data and experiences. So, for example, rather than developing elaborate economic models to explain unemployment, Mitchell would support studies that collect and analyze data unemployment rates, contributing to a more evidence-based understanding. Number three, Mitchell said that economics will develop more fruitfully in future upon quantitative side. Mitchell predicted that economics would develop more fruitfully on the quantitative side. This means placing importance on numerical data and statistical analysis in economic research. For example, instead of relying solely on qualitative description of economic trends, Mitchell would encourage studies that provide quantitative measures such as GDP growth rates or inflation percentages. And number four, Mitchell founded the National Bureau of Economic Research, or in short NBER. Mitchell established the NBER, an institution dedicated on
dedicated to empirical research in economics. This organization has played a crucial role in promoting and conducting economic research. For example, the NBER has conducted studies on various economic topics such as business cycles, labor markets, and economic growth, contributing to valuable data and insight to the field. Okay, so number 5, under Mitchell's supervision, NBER launched one of the first comprehensive studies of the amount and distribution of national income. So, under Mitchell's supervision, the NBER launched a significant study on the amount and distribution of national income. This reflects the emphasis on empirical investigation to understand how economic benefits are distributed across different segments of the population. For example, the study might analyze income distribution trends, identifying whether certain groups experience disproportionate gains or losses over time. And number 6, NBER has published a vast bulk of statistical analysis over the years. And for the last one, most of these research are highly orthodox economics. Despite Mitchell's emphasis on empirical investigation, many of the NBER's research studies are described as highly orthodox. This means that while they focus on the real-world data, they may still adhere to conventional economic theories and methodologies. For example, an NBER study on monetary policy might employ standard economic models and theorize to analyze the impact of interest rate changes on inflation, despite the empirical emphasis. Okay, now we move on to the business cycle. His number 2 contribution. His big contribution. So, the study of business fluctuation was Mitchell's greatest contribution before the emergence of Great Depression and Keynes' book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money. So, business cycle theory approached a tested explanation of experience instead of an exercise in logic. Mitchell's empirical work on the business cycle led to 4 conclusions, which are business fluctuations arise in a money economy, business cycles are widely diffused throughout the economy, business fluctuations depend on the prospects for profit, and lastly, fluctuations are systematically generated by the economy itself. So, for the number 1, business fluctuation arise in a money economy tells us that Mitchell believed that the use of money in an economy introduces complexities and uncertainties leading to natural fluctuations in economic activity. So, for example, changes in interest rates, credit availability, and monetary policy can influence spending and investment, impacting the overall economic activity in a money-based system. For the number 2, business cycles are widely diffused throughout the economy. Tells us that Mitchell argued that economic ups and downs are not confined to specific industries but affect various sectors across the entire economy. For example, during a recession, not only manufacturing but also services, retail, and other sectors may experience declines in business activity as consumer spending contracts. So for the number 3, business fluctuations depend on the prospect for profit. Tells us that Mitchell emphasized that the anticipation of profits or the lack thereof plays a crucial role in driving business cycles. For example, during periods of economic expansion, businesses may expect higher profits, leading to increased investments, hiring, and economic growth. Conversely, during a downturn, lower profit expectation can result in reduced investments and economic contraction. So for the number 4, or for the last in the business cycle, fluctuations are systematically generated by the economy itself. It actually tells us that Mitchell suggested that business cycles are not random occurrence but are systematically generated by the inherent dynamics of the economic system. For example, the boom and bust phases of a business cycle are seen as part of the natural rhythm of economic activity. For instance, during periods of prosperity, increased spending and investment can lead to overheating, eventually causing a downturn as the economy adjusts. Okay, now we move to the third approaches brought by Mitchell. It is social planning. So there are 8 important points on these approaches, which are: number 1, recognition of defects in the business system; number 2, advocacy for social planning; number 3, pragmatic psychology basis; number 4, defense of social planning as not un-American; number 5, challenges in defining objective; number 6, interdependence of social processes; number 7, consideration of direct and indirect effects; and lastly, number 8, inevitability of national planning. Number 1 is recognition of defects in the business system. Okay, so Mitchell observed that the frequent occurrence of economic crises and depressions indicated a defect in the automatic functioning of the business system. Number 2, advocacy for social planning. Mitchell proposed the need for careful social planning or national planning to address the negative features of business fluctuations while preserving economic liberty and enhancing security. Number 3, pragmatic psychology basis. Mitchell's support for national planning was influenced by his pragmatic psychology, emphasizing a practical and empirical approach to address economic challenges. Okay, number 4, defense of social planning as not un-American. Mitchell defended social planning, rejecting the notion that it is un-American. This reflects his belief in the compatibility of planning with American values. Number 5, challenges in defining objective. So, Mitchell acknowledged that its significant difficulty in social planning is reaching a consensus on the goals or objectives that society aims to achieve. Number 6, interdependence of social processes. The second difficulty in planning, according to Mitchell, arises from the interdependence of social processes. This highlights that the complexity of societal interactions. Number 7, consideration of direct and indirect effects. Mitchell argued that wise social planning must take into account both direct and indirect effects of social actions on the economy and society. And lastly, inevitability of national planning. So, Mitchell asserted that national planning is inevitable, suggesting that given the challenges and defects in the existing system, a more organized and planned approach is necessary.
These are the 3 books that wrote by Mitchell. The first one is The Backward Art of Spending Money. The second is Business Cycles and Their Causes. And the last one is Types of Economic Theory, which is From Mercantilism to Institutionalism. Assalamualaikum and hi everyone, my name is Saliha. Okay, let's proceed to the next American economist, which is John Kenneth Galbraith. John Kenneth Galbraith was born on 15 October 1908 at Iona Station, Ontario, Canada, and died on 29 April 2006 at 97 years old. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture from the Ontario Agricultural College and received a Master and PhD in Agricultural Economics from the University of California, Berkeley. His experience include the post of his economist for the American Farm Bureau Federation, high position with the U.S. government during World War II, membership on the board of editors of Fortune magazine, ambassador to India during the Kennedy administration, professor of economics at Harvard University, and chairman of the American for Democratic Action. Galbraith was also a novelist and an expert on Far Eastern art. Taken as a whole, Galbraith's major writings constitute both an attack on neoclassical economic thought and an analysis of modern capitalism. Nearly all of the characteristics of the institutionalist school apply to his many works. Galbraith critiqued the neoclassical conventional wisdom, which is a set ideas that is familiar and widely accepted but no longer relevant. His evolutionary approach explores changing conditions and examines the need to change ideas to fit new situations. He highlights on the conventional wisdom, not on those who originally expounded the ideas. Within Galbraith's overall theory of modern capitalism, one can find several basic theories that challenge orthodox economics. Two theories of particular importance are one is the dependence effect, and second is a theory of firms' behavior. Next is the dependence effect. Neoclassical economy assumes that consumers are sovereign, which is consumer buys goods and services in the market in response to their personal desire on demand. However, according to Galbraith, it is not consumers who are sovereign in the modern industrial system, but rather the gigantic firms that produce and market goods and services. Modern capitalism is dominated by large enterprise and characterized by an abundance of contrived wants. They are the product of corporate planning and massive advertising. Producers decide what shall be produced and then mold consumers' tastes so that they can buy this product. The new classical theories of consumer choice that wants as given. The question asked by Galbraith is that how consumers go about formulating that wants in the first place. According to Galbraith, one cannot define production as satisfying wants if that production creates the wants. His theory of consumer demand has an important policy implication, which is there will be an under-allocation of the resource to public goods that social imbalance. The creation of artificial wants shift resources towards private goods and away from public goods. that have greater inherent value. For example, new automobiles are seen as being more important than new roads. One way to remedy this imbalance, said Cambridge, would be to impose sales tax on consumer goods and services. The objective was to increase the availability of public sector goods and services. Next is Cambridge's theory of the firm. The neoclassical theory of firm concludes that corporate behavior and performance can best be understood by assuming that firms attempt to maximize profit. Cambridge says this is true for market sector, which is owners of small firms actively manage their enterprise, but not the planning sector, which is ownership and control are spread. The disgruntled stockholder who does not like the performance of a particular firm does not have an option of firing the management. The usual recourse is to sell the share of the company and buy share of the other company. The technostructure, which is a group of experts in different areas, consists of managers, executive, designer, engineer, and so on. Not only has an incentive to maximize the return to the millions of anonymous stockholders, but it also pursues much more complex purpose, which Cambridge categorized as protective and affirmative. First theory is protective purpose. The central protective purpose of the firm is survival, which is need to earn a profit sufficient to keep more stockholders happy and to provide sufficient retained earnings for investment and growth. Do this by taking product price out of competition, direct price fixing, and informant price understanding within an industry. The purpose is to ensure that the rival firm earn a satisfactory level of profit, which is enabling them to meet their protective goals and to pursue their affirmative purpose. The second theory is affirmative purpose. The measure of affirmative purpose of the firm is corporate growth, which is growth of output, sales, and revenues produce greater employment, security, and financial reward to the members of the technostructure. In the orthodox theory of the firm, oligopolies restrict their production in order to boost their price and enhance their profit. Cambridge says that no point is better accepted by the neoclassical model than that the monopoly price is higher and the output smaller than is socially ideal. In Cambridge theory, oligopolies fit price at low level, which one that achieve a minimum profit and permit expansion of total output and sale. Large advertising outlets campaign to gain market share, unprofitable mergers between competitive and non-competitive firms, and so forth, all make perfect sense if the goal is growth. According to Cambridge, the neoclassical model describes an era that does not exist, which is high oligopoly price and restrict output because it assumes a purpose that is not pursued profit maximization. The last is policy implication. Garbage theory of the fund has several interesting policy implications. For example, traditional antitrust efforts should be abandoned. Their size off to economies of scale, large research and development budgets, and the ability to incorporate new technology. The public through government must raise control of the planning sector of the economy from the technostructure and ensuring that it serves the public purpose and also should take several forms. For example, a permanent public price and wage agency should control the price of the largest firm in the economy and ensure that wage gain in the major collective bargaining agreement do not exceed the growth of national productivity. This planning authority will also have to coordinate economics plans with other industrial nations. So, Cambridge call for government redistribution of income through public control of executive salaries, progressive taxation, and increase in the minimum wage, and a negative net income and tax plans. Firms in the market sector should be encouraged to merge so that they can compete more effectively with the firm in the planning sector. Gabriel saw the need for a greatly expanded role for government in the modern economy.
So, in conclusion, the institutionalist school, which began around 19 and pioneered by Thorstein van der Veblen, is an American contribution to economic thought. In general, this school did not agree with the laissez-faire system, deductive and microeconomic approach used by classical, marginalist and neoclassical school. Instead, they emphasize on the role of institutionalists in economic life, examine economy as a whole by using evolutionary and inductive method, and suggested government intervention in the economy. In general, there are three reasons why government have to intervene in the economy, which are to overcome clash of interest between groups, to correct and overcome deficiency and maladjustment in economic life, and number three, to implement liberal democratic reform in order to bring about more equitability distribution of wealth and income. So these schools were friendly towards the German historical school and its methodology. However, despite certain similarities in methodology between them, the latter was not nationalistic but more liberal and democratic in its outlook.